Well, hello there, you dirty dogs, and welcome back to One on One, the show where we two-foot the facts and refuse to shake the hand of poorly formed football opinions. Today's episode is about one of the most divisive set of clubs in the game right now, all of whom fall under one corporate umbrella. Rival football fans have protested against them en masse, boycotting away days, vandalising their pitch, and interrupting play with severed limbs. Not to be outdone, the press have had their say on this particular collective too, with one Swedish publication comparing them to Adolf Hitler and Josef Fritzl. Yes, that's right, you guessed it. Today we're exploring the popular narrative that Red Bull are ruining the beautiful game. Is this white hot hate justified, or have they been unfairly demonised by traditionalists who can't let go of the past? Well, that is what we're here to investigate, dear Watson. I fully lost the plot. This loathing is particularly prevalent in the Bundesliga, home to RB Leipzig, the jewel in the energy drinks football crown. As such, we'll be spending a lot of our time right there. However, as we've touched upon already, the Red Bull football family consists of much more than just one club. So, to get a well-rounded view of this sporting soap opera, we're going to be touching upon all the major players. I said major players, Red Bull Brazil. Get out of here. I'm talking to a table. Think of them like Pokemon, each representing a different evolution of the company's football strategy. We have New York Red Bulls, sprouting Charmanders like Tyler Adams before ferrying them off to Europe. Then there's Red Bull Salzburg, the proving ground for their best and brightest Charmeleons, who either graduate to Germany like Naby Keita or are sold on at a premium, like Sadio Mane. And finally, Bundesliga outfit RB Leipzig, very much the Charizard in this whole excursion, spitting fire in the face of Germany's fan-centric culture. Did that help, or has everyone just clicked off to play Pokemon? Now we're all acquainted, let's have a look at how we're dividing this caffeine-fueled expedition up. Up first is a history lesson on how Red Bull worked its way into football and why this made them so many enemies. Then we're going to have a brief look at what makes them so successful on the pitch. Lastly, we'll use the evidence we've gathered to arrive at some sort of conclusion. A Red Bull a danger to everything that we hold dear in the beautiful game, or a traditionalist merely scared of their innovation and rapid ascension up the football ladder. Part 1. The Herd. In this section, we're going to create a neat timeline of events, looking at the takeovers of the aforementioned clubs and the reactions that it caused. Red Bull Salzburg. In 2005, Red Bull owner Dietrich Mateschitz completed his takeover of the financially crippled Austria Salzburg, and the manner in which it happened is probably ground zero for a lot of hatred that they now receive. Originally, the takeover was welcomed, at least by the former chairman, with the club in dire need of investment. However, Red Bull's plan to effectively press the reset button soon became clear to the fans, and what was first perceived as their salvation actually accelerated their extinction. And talking of salvation, we promise to deliver you from boredom if you hit that subscribe button and leave this video a like. Dankeschön. And just in case fans didn't get the memo, once the takeover was complete, Red Bull dropped one of the coldest press releases in football history, stating, as far as the company is concerned, there is no history, no tradition. They even changed the date as to when the club was founded on the official website to 2005. Something that's since been reversed. But still. For the fans who'd watched their side lift 3 domestic titles in the 1990s, as well as reach the UEFA Cup final against Inter Milan, this was simply inconceivable. The changes, however, began at a breakneck speed. The purple and white kits the club had worn for decades were unceremoniously replaced with red and white. Red Bull's corporate colour scheme, if you haven't worked that one out yet. And the club's crest was swapped out with a version of their famous bull logo. The damage wasn't just symbolic either, with all staff and management removed from their positions overnight to make way for this new era. From Red Bull's perspective, they'd just bought a club saddled with debt that had only just staved off relegation the season prior. The time for sentimentality was over and radical change was needed. In fact, the only bone that Red Bull threw the fans, if you can call it that, only served to aggravate them further. Upon asking the club to maintain their association with the colour purple, Red Bull conceded and offered them, wait for it, the socks of the away goalkeeper kit. That's all they were willing to give them. Quelle surprise, the fans considered this derisory. Purple was important to the Austria Salzburg fans because it was originally a symbol of their neutrality. When they founded in 1933, clubs were normally left or right-leaning in their politics. Austria Salzburg wanted none of this. They were all about the football. Eventually, the changes enacted by Red Bull were too much for certain fans, with 1500 staging a walkout in September 2005, vowing never to return. To appease the remaining matchgoers and boost the club's football IQ, big names like Giovanni Trapattoni and Herb Stevens arrived, and it worked, with the club winning an unprecedented 10 titles in the 15 years after the much maligned takeover. Marschitz had his first Infinity Stone in order to conquer the football universe. However, it was a PR disaster. New York Red Bulls. The whole process was much smoother when Red Bull added the Metro Stars to their ranks in 2006 for a reported $100 million, with the company appeasing fans by acknowledging their short history rather than trying to eradicate it. Clearly Red Bull had learnt its lesson. However, didn't go completely without incident. They did face a political backlash after changing the name. Prior to Red Bull's ownership, the club's full name was New York/New Jersey Metro Stars. Yes, they had a slash in it, with one club representing two states or the tri-state area, as fans will tell you. So a decision was made. Even though the club played in New Jersey, drew most of its fan base from New Jersey, and originally received funding from the state, they dropped it from the name. Red Bull saw little commercial benefit from being aligned with the diner capital of the country. 525 of them there, apparently. Who knew? However, it seemed that politicians and civic servants were more bothered by the name change than the fans, who were won over, it's got to be said, pretty darn quickly. And in the first game after the takeover, Shakira sang the national anthem pre-game, Wycliffe Jean did a halftime performance, and Pele was wheeled out as the inaugural fixture's ambassador. That'll do it, won't it? That's a surefire way to win people over. Recent exports such as Jesse Marsch, who is now manager of Red Bull Salzburg, and Tyler Adams, one of Leipzig's most prodigious young talents, show that the US remains strategically important to the brand's footballing operation. Unlike the Austria Salzburg fans, the New York Red Bull fans have arguably been given more of an identity than robbed of one. So in this instance, the collateral damage, which is a great film by the way, appears to mainly be crestfallen public servants. And the state of New Jersey, their pride, probably. Saying that, New York Red Bulls fans might feel a little bit differently if they're nothing more than a feeder club for the larger organisation moving forward. If there's any out there watching this, please let me know how you feel in the comments below. RB Leipzig. Red Bull have been trying to invest in German football since 2006, with their initial offer for FC Sachsen Leipzig rebuffed by an extremely wary DFB, aka the German Football Association. The rationale behind heading out east was clear. Leipzig had a large population and a great football pedigree. In 1987, for instance, Lokomotiv Leipzig had reached the European Cup Winners' Cup against Johan Cruyff's Ajax. However, the city hadn't tasted top-tier football since 1994, with its best side sliding down the divisions after German reunification into financial oblivion. Clearly, there'd be a massive appetite for a project which promised it in 8 years or less. In fact, before RB Leipzig reached the Bundesliga in 2016, only 4 other sides from the Eastern German territories had featured in the league. This is still something that's very telling in today's German football landscape. So, at least RB Leipzig are helping to redress the balance, right? Don't the people of the East deserve to enjoy these highs after suffering all those many lows? Well, yeah. Sort of. But before we christen Red Bull the saviours of the East, we have to remember that they failed with several bids elsewhere. They approached Fortuna Dusseldorf in the west, St. Pauli in the north, and 1860 Munich in the south. All well-established clubs with strong traditions and vocal fan bases who ensured any takeover talks were short-lived. Red Bull were not on a geopolitical crusade by the time they headed back out east. They just run out of options. In the end, Marschitz & Co. bought out 5th Division side SVV Markranstadt, located in a sleepy suburb with just 15k inhabitants. Starting from the bottom was less than ideal, but Markranstadt was only 10 kilometers away from Leipzig, where a population of 500,000 and a 43,000-seater stadium, purpose-built for the 2006 World Cup, yearned for top-flight football. However, when they tried to rebrand said club in 2009, they hit a bit of a roadblock. German football laws were far more stringent than those in Austria and the US, and did not permit teams to be named after their sponsors, unless they had a historical association. So, to circumvent this, Red Bull renamed Markranstadt Rasenballsport Leipzig, which roughly translates to Lawn Ball Leipzig. And this translation doesn't really need to make sense, does it? Because it permits the club to use the acronym RB, aka Red Bull, in all of the club's literature and on their replica kits. Traditionalists in Germany view this with much more venom than just a clever marketing ploy by the company. They see it as an affront to German football's democratic and anti-commercial spirit. As the newly christened RB Leipzig worked its way up the German football pyramid, they faced further scrutiny. When they were eventually promoted to the BuLi 2 in 13-14, the German Football League took umbrage with several issues, one being that they were run by too few people, and two being that they were not independent enough from the larger Red Bull organisation. So once again, Red Bull quickly adapted, redesigning their crest, changing their organisational structure and lowering membership fees. As such, they were granted a licence, but many accused them of manipulating the rules to serve their corporate agenda. This included desecrating the 50+1 rule, something that is sacrosanct in German football culture. Basically, the 50+1 rule stipulates that the club and its fans must own at least 50% of the club and one share, aka the majority holding, thus giving members significant voting powers on issues such as ticket prices. The Bundesliga officially states that the rule is in place to protect against reckless owners and safeguard the democratic customs of German clubs. Now, RB Leipzig aren't technically in breach of the 50+1 ruling. The club has a membership scheme, and crucially, it's not registered as a private company on the stock exchange like a Dortmund. However, this does not mean that they implement it in the way it was intended. Red Bull have a 99% stake in the club, with its members owning the other 1%. However, this 1% owns 100% of all the voting rights. This is their way around it. Becoming an RB Leipzig member is roughly €800 a year, on top of a €100 first-time registration fee. For comparison, becoming a member at Dortmund or Bayern is a measly €60. Leipzig also retain the right to reject any application without justification, and a membership doesn't even guarantee voting rights. Hopefully that explains to you quite clearly why the club only has 17 voting members, most of whom are employed by Red Bull in some capacity. Basically, Red Bull can act with impunity. They've built a loyal fan base. They've treated this loyal fan base to cheap tickets, top-class facilities, and a progressive brand of football, but still, they keep them at arm's length. Other owners, such as those at Hanover and 1860 Munich, have also argued that the 50+1 method is outdated, saying the league is losing ground to England and Spain as a result. Eintracht Frankfurt sporting director Freddy Bobic has also said it's hampering competition in the league, warning of a monotony in the Bundesliga if opportunities to generate income aren't changed. So the legislation does have its detractors. They just tend to come from boardroom level. Subsequently, the Bundesliga is at a crossroads, and now the German fans worry that Red Bull have created a blueprint of sorts for new investors to come in and bend the rules in the same way. But before we reach our own conclusion, we have to get beyond those brash strips and strongly worded press releases to see who is running the show behind the scenes. Simply put, Red Bull is not a faceless organisation, and they've had to add people to their staff who have a deep-seated love for the game in order to achieve their goals. 10 years after taking over a 5th division side, Red Bull Leipzig are now in the Champions League quarter-finals and attracting crowds of 38,000. Whatever your views on them, that is impressive. Part 2. The house that Ralf built. German football writer Ralf Honigstein once told the press that part of the reason people hate them is because they are smart and do things with a long-term vision. Now, the vision he's referencing here is firmly that of Ralf Rangnick's. The Backnang native has been at the epicentre of Red Bull's ascension up the football ladder, serving as both head coach and sporting director at Leipzig before a new role was created for him at Red Bull HQ in 2019. However, he wasn't always afforded this level of respect, Like the company he now represents, he began as an outsider, shunned by football's traditionalists. As a player, Rangnick didn't make it past amateur status, but as a manager, he's gone to the very top of the game, starting out with Stuttgart's reserves in 1987. 10 years later, while at the helm of third-tier side Ulm, he gave a highly detailed TV interview on why he preferred a flat back 4 over a 3, which was the go-to in Germany at the time. Afterwards, he was mockingly referred to as the Professor, dismissed as an eccentric who didn't have a credible playing career. Spells in the Bundesliga with Stuttgart, Hanover and Schalke made the naysayers look like fools, winning the DFB Pokal and reaching the Champions League semi-final with the latter. After this, he made a surprise move to third-tier side Hoffenheim. It was here where he first demonstrated his ability to build a club from the ground up, securing back-to-back promotions before making them a fully fledged Bundesliga outfit. By 2012, Red Bull had seen enough, and after he left Schalke for a second time, he got the call from Gerard Houllier, former Liverpool manager and Red Bull's head of global football. In his first 12 months at Red Bull, Salzburg lost the league by 5 points, and New York Red Bulls crashed out of the MLS Cup in the semi-final of their conference. Progress was slow on the German frontier too. RB Leipzig had spent 3 seasons in Germany's 4th tier before securing promotion. Not exactly the meteoric rise which was first promised. Basically, Red Bull's football machine was running on fumes. Fortunately, they'd already brought the man in who knew how to fix it. Rangnick did this by A, creating a template for their style of play which would be rolled out across the board, and B, fine-tuning the club's recruitment policy. Since his arrival, the German has insisted on quick, vertical play that uses highly coordinated team pressing to win the ball back in advantageous areas. One of the methods he uses, which embodies this ethos, is called the ticking clock. Rangnick uses a custom-made clock that the players can hear tick while playing small-sided games. It challenges them to win the ball back from the opposition in 8 seconds and then to have a shot after a further 10 seconds. The recruitment is now geared towards finding the sort of player who's going to be able to facilitate this style of play. These players will normally be aged between 17 and 24, and they'll be placed at one of the aforementioned clubs based on their readiness to execute Rangnick's game plan. Now, Rangnick acolyte and former Hoffenheim manager Julian Nagelsmann has signed on. These young talents are expected to go supernova. Part 3, the summary. To settle this, I'm going to defer matters to you, the jury. But before you vote in the poll above, one last pitch from both sides. I will now be talking on behalf of Red Bull, okay? Have Red Bull provided a more permanent kind of investment than anything else in East German football since the wall fell? Yes. Do Red Bull have cheaper season tickets than Dortmund, their biggest detractors? Yes, again. Is it good for German football that Bayern have won 14 of the last 20 titles? No. Is my client Red Bull the only team with significant corporate backing in the league? No. Would Austria Salzburg have gone out of business had my client not stepped in? Likely. Would the MLS have attracted the level of sponsor it did in that period when it was culturally insignificant without Red Bull? Maybe not. And has Red Bull unearthed a significant amount of talent from across the world which our detractors are only too happy to bid for? Haaland going to Dortmund is case in point. Over to the other lawyer, which will also be played by me. I have well and truly lost the plot in here, guys. You make a fine point, man in the orange t-shirt with glorious hair, but what about this? I put this to you, Red Bull. Did you attempt to eradicate the history of Austria Salzburg, completely disregarding the fans' emotional connection with 70 plus years of football in an attempt to create a blank canvas to push your product? A definitive yes. Does this show a complete ambivalence to one of the key cornerstones of football, which is community? Again, we think so. Do Red Bull fans even feel respected by their club? Are they treated as an important part of the decision-making process? No. Your season tickets might be cheap, but that is because they lack value in other areas. Zing. Have Red Bull produced any local talent, particularly at Leipzig, that would suggest they value their academies as much as buying ready-made foreign talent that can be sold on for a significant profit? Nope. That's it. I feel like we've given both sides a fair representation. I want you to vote in the poll just above. Have a think about it. You wield a lot of power here, guys. You're going to decide if we should put Red Bull in football prison, okay? Bosh, that is another episode of One on One in the bag, okay? Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit me up on Twitter and Instagram. Let me know what subjects you'd like to see me delve into in future episodes. Thank you very much for watching. Look after yourselves, be kind to one another. Shout out key workers. Bye.